today, and as you can see, there are many of you around this table, so we will require ourselves to hold ourselves accountable to being brief so we can hear from all voices in the room. The Philippines is a founding member of the Open Government Partnership and has spearheaded many national and local reforms that it can be proud of. If you've been in the room from this morning onwards, you would have heard of the many efforts through the 75 open government commitments that Philippines has made through 6 national action plans to date, with many other local jurisdictions now joining the OGP local program. As the Philippines embarks on its first term on the OGP steering committee globally, reformers both inside and outside the government have a unique opportunity to take the learning from the last decade of the partnership to continue tackling the challenges and deepen open government efforts at home and in the region. The Open Government Challenge that you heard about this morning provides a unique opportunity for the Philippines to respond with leadership. Today, we are very honored to be joined by several distinguished panelists, secretaries, open government leaders, colleagues from civil society, and partners around the world. We will hear from them about their ongoing and planned reforms, ways to strengthen partnerships, and their ideas from where civil society and government can take inspiration from. But first, let me turn to OGP's Director for Accountability and Learning, who has spearheaded the independent reporting mechanism efforts in the region to provide some highlights of the Philippines' open government journey thus far. Tintin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shreya. Hi to everyone. I would like to start by highlighting some of the findings of the report that the Independent Reporting Mechanism has produced and will be published in the forthcoming weeks, looking at the open government journey of the Philippines. As a founding member of the OGP since 2011, Philippines has been in the membership for 13 years, and it has been a complex journey of spearheading open government reforms, while at the same time navigating political transitions and evolving governance challenges. As Shreya has already mentioned, Philippines has had 75 commitments over these 13 years with 6 national action plans and is currently implementing a 4-year action plan. I'd like to highlight some of the major achievements and challenges on that journey. First one is the evolution of the ecosystem of open government. Initially, when Philippines founded OGP, the process was led by the Department for Budget and Management and a handful of civil society organizations. Since then, we have seen the growth and diversification of that ecosystem, and we have seen that open government norms have spread across different branches and levels of government. Up till now, 32 unique government institutions have implemented at least one OGP commitment, and there are 5 members in the local program implementing their own commitments as well. There have been other branches of government brought into the process, such as the judiciary, independent institutions, and the most important thing here is that this ecosystem has proven to be extremely resilient to weather political transitions and some of the very challenging times for the civil society as well. Philippines has also been an early innovator in encouraging locally led open government initiatives, such as the Seal of Local Good Governance. And most importantly, as I said, this collaboration has proven to be a really good illustrative example in the partnership of having a permanent collaboration. In terms of early gains of reforms, Philippines has made significant progress in fiscal transparency, both in terms of disclosure of budget information as well as participation in budgetary processes. One of the elements that really stand out from the Philippines budgeting process is the citizen participatory audits, something that started way before OGP, but has expanded and intensified in the last decade. Citizen participatory audits have empowered local civil society organizations and have actually led to very tangible improvements in health and education sectors in areas where they have been implemented. However, as we know from the current context surrounding the budget process in the country, embedding openness into broader public financial management reform remains essential. And there is more room for closer dialogue between civil society and the government to ensure oversight and participation in the budget process. Another sector with significant gains in transparency has been the extractives. Through engagement with the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, the Philippines has made significant progress in opening up the extractive sectors and publishing information for the first time in resources such as nickel, gold, and copper. An online portal has been created for contracts, revenues, and social programs, alongside capacity building for civil society. Localization efforts are currently ongoing to ensure the dialogue between engaged governments, extractive companies, civil society, and the communities that are directly affected by mining operations. In 2021, Philippines EITI introduced a beneficial ownership register, albeit with limited success so far. However, the passage of the new procurement law in 2024, which mandates a comprehensive beneficial ownership register, marks a turning point. Despite all these successes, there have been some setbacks and challenges on this journey. Commitments that involved legislative action have not always been very successful. And the big one here is the commitment from the very first OGP action plan of the country related to the passage of the Freedom of Information law. Despite the fact that there was an executive order passed in 2016 that has provided extended access to information, there are serious limitations in terms of its application, and Philippines until now remains one of the very few members of OGP without a Freedom of Information law. Last but not least, there have been some missed opportunities for sectors that are critical to the country that could definitely benefit from more participatory and transparent approaches, but haven't necessarily been covered by the OGP action plans. And that sector is energy, when it comes to climate change and energy transition. There have been no commitments made in this area in OGP action plans. Last, I would like to say that, as I said, the report, which is forthcoming, I would like to encourage everyone to look out for that report because it provides a way more comprehensive analysis of all the achievements, but also analysis of some of the challenges and factors behind them. And I would very much encourage you to take a look at that report. We are open for feedback and always look for the stories that have actually produced tangible results for the Filipino citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Tinitin, for that overview of what the journey to date has been. Today, of course, the task ahead of us is to define the road ahead. And this is an opportunity to hear from our government representatives the work that is planned and ongoing, ideas from civil society on how these efforts can be strengthened further, how reforms can deliver tangible impacts, and hear from our partners ideas and inspirations from elsewhere across the region and the world that Philippines can adapt and model in its own context. So we'll do this in a few thematic clusters. We have a diverse group of speakers here today, so we'll try and do this along some clusters. First, we'll begin with anti-corruption and fiscal openness. Reforms that promote integrity and anti-corruption, as you've heard, have been a hallmark of OGP across the globe for many years, including on key areas like beneficial ownership, open contracting, and now political integrity. Building on these positive outcomes, the OGP community is now asking members to raise the bar and aim at more ambitious reforms and integrated approaches to anti-corruption. The passage of the new Government Procurement Act, as you've all heard several times today, mandates a comprehensive beneficial ownership registry, and this marks a turning point. But what else? Let us hear about where Philippines goes next in the fight against corruption. And to kick us off, I invite Bayani H. Agabin, Undersecretary of the Department of Finance. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Sheria. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this important discussion. At the Department of Finance, we are championing several transformative reforms through the Philippine Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, as stated by Tinatin earlier, or PHEITI. One of the key reforms is subnationalizing extractive transparency and ushering participatory governance, or the Set Up Go. It's a commitment to the 6th OGP National Action Plan. This initiative addresses a pressing challenge in the extractive sector, ensuring that revenues from extractive industries are managed transparently and fairly, especially at the local level, before communities are impacted. We believe transparency in extractives should not rest solely on the national government. it must also involve regional and local stakeholders. And it is through Set Up Go that we aim to empower local governments to take more active role in tracking and utilizing revenues while giving civil society and public access to critical data to monitor these activities. In this way, we ensure that decisions and revenues benefit those most affected by mining, oil, and gas activities. And this program reflects our broader commitment to making transparency a shared responsibility. Additionally, we are advancing the beneficial ownership, again as mentioned by Tina earlier, or BO transparency. It's a vital reform in our fight against corruption. And PHEITI, for the information of everyone, already maintains a beneficial owner registry. We recognize, however, that submission to this registry is currently voluntary. That's why we are now working closely with our colleague, the Securities and Exchange Commission, to establish a data sharing agreement. We are almost at the finish line of this effort. Hopefully, this will make it easier to collect beneficial ownership data. And while we have made progress publishing this data, it still requires waivers from companies. And so we will continue our effort to ensure that more extractive companies disclose the real and beneficial owners, a crucial step in addressing conflict of interest, corruption, and hidden ownership structures. I have 40 seconds. Another significant reform is that we are advancing the enhanced fiscal regime for large-scale mining, which was recently approved by the Senate on the third reading and on final approval this coming Monday. This bill contains provisions to strengthen transparency and accountability in the mining sector and will significantly impact the future work of PHEITI. The new regime also standardizes fiscal structures for both mineral production sharing agreements and financial and technical assistance agreements, or FTAs. It simplifies and consolidates tax reporting to make it more consistent. And it also gives the monitoring and auditing functions to agencies like our Bureau of Internal Revenue and the Bureau of Customs to examine mineral sales and exports. Mining companies will be required to disclose key documents such as assay reports, sales agreements, integrated financial reports. These measures will improve the quality and reliability of extractive data to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek. Thank you for raising those important points of ensuring that critical data sets are available to local communities, not just at the national level, but also at the local level, and also the significance of moving from voluntary disclosures to mandatory disclosures down the line. Let me move then next to the Security and Exchange Commission, closely involved in the beneficial ownership transparency work, Commissioner McGill Bryant Fernandez. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Shreya. And in the interest of time, I do away with the usual pleasantries and just express good afternoon to everyone, and happy to see familiar faces around the table. And it's an honor to represent Chair Aquino in this forum and be able to share the initiatives of the Commission in this space. As the overseer of the Philippine corporate sector, the Securities and Exchange Commission Philippines has taken significant strides in institutionalizing a robust framework for beneficial ownership disclosure in line with international standards and the open ownership principles. Consistent with the FATF guidance and invoking and optimizing our powers under the revised Corporation Code, the reporting threshold for all companies registered under the SEC prevents ownership and control structures from being exploited to mask illicit activities. Leveraging collaboration to facilitate access to information and effective enforcement. In partnership with the Asian Development Bank, we aim to launch this year, 2025, a new beneficial ownership registry to improve real-time tracking and compliance monitoring. We continue to engage law enforcement agencies and competent authorities, mainstreaming the value of beneficial ownership in government operations. To date, we have 21 data sharing agreements including one with the Government Procurement Policy Board, or GPPB, which was instrumental in the inclusion of beneficial ownership in the new Government Procurement Act. I'm also looking forward to the new DSA that we will be signing soon with the Department of Finance. Building on this, we hope not only to strengthen our interagency collaborations, but also to expand DSAs with foreign regulators to combat cross-border financial crimes. Likewise, we're working closely with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime and the Open Ownership for a comprehensive policy review on beneficial ownership, which includes, among others, a possible proposal for a beneficial ownership bill. Finally, digitalization has been at the core of our transparency efforts in the Commission. Last July 2024, we launched the SEC SWIFT Corporate and Other Records Exchange Protocol, a web portal that facilitates real-time exchange of corporate records and beneficial ownership data, reducing response time to within 24 hours. Meanwhile, our electronic filing and submission tool, which we call eFast, streamlines the submission of declarations, creating a structured and interoperable database with up-to-date information. With all these initiatives, we trust that we have demonstrated the SEC's commitment to advancing a whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach, capitalizing on policies, partnerships, and digitalization to drive lasting open ownership reforms. This, however, requires collective action, and so we urge you to join us in championing transparency and embracing open ownership as a cornerstone of a truly open and responsive government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Philippines joins 40 other OGP member countries now working on beneficial ownership transparency, and I hope you will take advantage of a platform of peers whose experiences you can learn from in doing so. Let me now turn to Attorney Jen, Executive Director from the Procurement Service, Department of Budget and Management. A lot has been said about the procurement reforms. Perhaps you'd like to tell us where your ambitions lie going forward. Attorney Jen.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I am from the Procurement Service Department of Budget and Management, and if you happen to attend the plenary this morning with a lot of the procurement reform initiatives that were announced this morning are part of our operations in the PSDBM, so there's really a lot of pressure with our office right now. So just to give a little context how we came up with a transformative agenda in our office. Those who are from the Philippines here, participants from the Philippines here, it's of public knowledge that the PSDBM has been in the heart of controversies just 3 years or 2 years ago, and this is because of the PPE contracts during the COVID-19 pandemic that were purchased by PSDBM, and also the controversies around the procurement of the laptops for learning institutions. So when we came in this office in 2022, so I was part of the new management who inherited actually all of these concerns and issues. We really needed to issue a transformative agenda or drastic reforms in our office. So we looked at enhancing transparency of the procurement process and openness of the procurement process in order to regain the trust of our clients and in order to regain the trust of the public. So actually, in 2023, that was an opportunity for us we took the opportunity of applying with the LIFT Accelerator program of the Open Contracting Partnership. It's a program where we applied in partnership with a civil society organization to look at our internal process, basically to help us look at the core issues in resolving value for money, competition, and our service delivery to our client agencies. We were part of the 150 applications worldwide, and we were fortunate to obtain the grant. Out of the 150 applications, we're one of the 10 who luckily made it and obtained the grant for that support. So through the LIFT project, our partner civil society organization was able to confirm that there is worth in having a central procuring agency like PSDBM. and they were able to confirm that we generate a lot of savings for the government. It's around 711 million pesos for the 40 CSE or common use supplies and equipment that we procured on that year. So because we were also under the leadership of Secretary Mina Pangandaman, our staunch supporter, PSDBM was made part of the DBM group that worked on the amendments of the decades-old procurement law. And in working on the amendment of the procurement law, which turned into the new Government Procurement Act that was signed by the President last year. So my time is up. There's a lot. We were able to put in a lot of transparency measures and tools under the law where PSDBM and PhilJeps as the central electronic portal will be part of. So just to share with you and enumerate what are these features, there is to operationalize the principles of access to procurement-related information in accordance with open contracting parties, to operationalize the principle of participatory procurement through public monitoring, to disclose beneficial ownership. We have an upcoming DSA also with the SEC because the data on merchants registration is with us, with PhilJeps. To operationalize systems interconnectivity for efficiency of verifying the eligibility documents of the bidders, and the use of e-commerce platforms for efficiency in public procurement. So that's all.
Thank you, Attorney Jen. I know the 2 minutes are not enough, perhaps, to lay out all the dimensions of the new Procurement Act, but I'm sure we'll hear more from you in the years to come. And congratulations once again on being the first challenger from the Philippines to have entered the OpenGov Challenge. I'll turn next to Lionel Taganganko, Managing Director for Program Strategy from the VSolve Foundation. We often find that whenever we talk to PSDBM, we also talk to VSolve Foundation, and that speaks to the strong partnership you have. So, Lionel, floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Big shout out to PS and Open Contracting Partnership, our partners in improving public procurement. So we're the CSO that Director Jen mentioned. And yes, indeed, it's an inspiring, transformative story at PS. Just a few years ago, they're at the center of scandal and at the brink of abolition, but with the leadership of Sec Mina, ED Dennis, ED Jen, and of course, the dedicated career public servants, they're turning things around. So yeah, so we independently analyzed PSS performance and found that in 2023 alone, it saved Filipinos at least 711 million pesos, or 32% savings versus retail prices, which is huge, by bulk buying supplies for government agencies. We also found that savings versus the government budget were 5 times higher when multiple bidders participated versus just one bidder, showing the importance of competition. And to foster more competition, we recommended steps to lower barriers for new firms to bid. And our paper is available on the OCP website. Looking forward, I'd like to propose 2 big focus areas to build on this momentum. First, open the national budget process to greater public participation, especially over the setting of macro-fiscal targets, budget strategy, and throughout the legislative process. While the Philippines ranks high on budget transparency indicators, meaningful influence over the budget remains limited, as we know. We found it impossible to get documents during bicameral deliberations. Congress, as we all know, inserted hundreds of billions of pesos in public works projects removed from well-programmed education, health, and social services without public knowledge nor scrutiny. A low-hanging fruit for the executive branch is including civil society in DBCC meetings and the DBM's technical budget hearings with government agencies, as was practiced a few years ago. And there are ways to do it efficiently and effectively. This way, come budget season in Congress, the executive branch will be able to present and defend a development strategy and a budget that already have the buy-in from civil society and even business groups. Congress should also commit to opening the BICAM list of projects before the budget bill is passed. And the truth is, public trust in budget legislation is broken, and it must be restored. Second, open infrastructure and local government contracts with the goal of designing reforms to reduce corruption. Anti-corruption groups have flagged that corruption in local infrastructure is rampant. According to Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong, approved budgets are allegedly padded to fund kickbacks at nearly 70% of contract amount. And these happen in the agency receiving 17% of the national budget, allegedly. And we're hopeful that with the passage of the NGPA, the open contracting reforms, BO reforms that we're pushing through PhilJeps and GPPB, we'll be able to weaken these systems of corruption. To understand if and how the new law can improve the things that we want to see, We need to set up a good monitoring, evaluation, and research program that includes independent researchers, journalists, and civil society monitors. And we at WeSolve are excited to do our part as co-commitment holders of the government under the OGC, or Open Government Challenge, to set up this program and to open up contracting data through MPhilJEPs, among others. These are big challenges, but PSDBM has proven that change is possible. And I hope that our mindset moving forward will be, kung kaya ng PS, kaya po natin. Right? If PS can do it, so can we. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lionel, for that call to action and for that important reminder that it's important for these initiatives to go beyond the executive, to include all branches of government, but also ending with that message of hope that if you can build back trust from a place where it's broken. So with that, let me move to some of our partners who can give us inspiration for where Philippines can learn from as you bring insights from your work, not just here in the Philippines, but also elsewhere in the region. Let me first go to Bernadine Ferns, Head of Sustainability and Infrastructure, Open Contracting Partnership. Bernadine, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Shreya, and hello, everyone. It's such a delight to be here. So for those of you who might be new to open contracting, you've heard it mentioned a lot today. I'll give you a quick primer on what it's all about. Essentially, open contracting is about transformation. It's about using the power of open data through a collaborative approach to deliver better outcomes from public procurement. And why is this important? It's important because there's $13 trillion that are being spent on public contracts all over the world every year. And there's a lot of leakage that comes with that. It's not always corruption, it's sometimes inefficiency, mismanagement. And what we've been working on is really trying to find ways to do procurement better. And so here in the Philippines, you've already heard from Edie Jen and Lai, our partners here, first through the Live Philippines project, but surely going from strength to strength and beyond, some of the work that we've already been doing here. What struck me from this partnership that we've had here in the Philippines is, first of all, the government-civil society partnership, which has been really, really effective. I've also heard a lot of talk here about data publication or sharing of data, but what's really key and what we're hearing repeatedly from PS is that obviously publishing is not important, we have to use it. And we're really looking forward to how we can continue to support that process, for example, through our red flags methodology or OCDS use case indicators. So again, I applaud the Live Philippines team and look forward to the next steps. Now, moving on to some of our other exciting projects in the region, I'll touch briefly on two projects. So the first is in Indonesia, where we have a great partnership with Indonesia Corruption Watch and LKPP, the National Procurement Service, where we're doing lots of really innovative things. So obviously, we're publishing data in the Open Contracting Data Standard format. We've applied our analytics, the red flags methodology that I talked about, and other indicators so that you can easily automate analysis to test for efficiency, to test for competitiveness, to test for value for money. But what's really cool there is that we're helping to improve internal supervision and oversight. So we're working with government auditors via Indonesia Corruption Watch to empower auditors to use data to improve their supervision function. And that has proved to be really effective. We're seeing now that auditors are scrutinizing or looking at issues, more cases than ever before. We're seeing that they're responding to complaints quicker than ever before, an average 77 days faster, and we're seeing that as an upward trend. Now, the second case study I'll touch on very quickly is in India, where we're using procurement data to join up with other data sets, so climate, weather data, vulnerability data, looking at poverty, age, gender, to help the government decision makers to improve flood procurement so that the poorest and most vulnerable people are better protected from the worst effects of our changing climate. And what we're seeing there is that disaster allocation funds are now going to the most vulnerable districts. And in fact, in the last state disaster relief fund allocation in the state of Assam in 2023, 95% of the budget approvals went to the top 10 vulnerable districts. And if you're interested in all of this, come along to our session tomorrow at 2:30 in the Grand Pavilion. Back to you, Shreya.
Thanks, Ben, for the plug for the session, but also for the inspiring examples that Philippines can learn from. An important reminder there is, as we talk about the importance of procurement and other data for saving lives and for the people, there's also good business sense, there's good decision-making that can be enabled with the availability of this data. So I hope Philippines will learn from the examples from Indonesia and India that you shared. Let me turn next to Emily Manuel, Regional Manager for Open Ownership, which has also been mentioned in this conversation. Emily, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ray. It's nice to be in a table with a group of friends. So not a lot of people know, but the Philippines is actually an early implementer of beneficial ownership transparency. So since 2001, it has enacted AML-CFT laws that effectively mandate BO disclosure. These efforts, initial efforts, were primarily driven by the FATF. At the helm of these reforms is the SEC, which has managed to improve BO declaration compliance through key initiatives, which has already been mentioned by the Honorable Commissioner. These include the enactment of amnesty programs, strengthening of sanctions, and at present, the development of a central BO register and entering into data sharing agreements. We at Open Ownership believe, though, that data use is where we see the true impact of these reforms. The newly enacted Government Procurement Act, which requires the publication of beneficial ownership data, can really be a showcase for this. By integrating PSDBM's procurement information with data coming from the SEC, procuring entities could effectively use BO information to screen for collusion, bid rigging, and other anti-competitive and corrupt practices. The use of BO data for these purposes should be the end goal for these initiatives, not data collection. Though its collection has primarily been triggered by FATF, the goal should be to enable government agencies to use this data effectively to produce real impact and achieve policy goals. We see growing momentum around this regionally. In August of last year, 8 countries, including the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, gathered for the first time to share insights into good practices and innovative approaches for the use of BO data for the recovery and return of stolen assets. With the law now in place, the Philippines has an opportunity to showcase what effective implementation of BOT reforms looks like, starting with public procurement and possibly moving to other key areas of reform as mentioned by Yusek Agabin, including on extractives, effective taxation. The Philippines has an opportunity to not only be a regional leader, but a world leader in how BO data is used in public procurement. How do we achieve this? First, let's explore how best to integrate the use of BO data in existing work processes in various key agencies in government. 2, develop the necessary digital infrastructure, including the use of data standards to ensure interoperability of these systems. 3rd, build the capacity of those who will be providing and using this data. 4th, provide those agencies such as the SEC, PSDBM, GPBB, tasked to implement this initiative with the necessary mandate, resources, and capacity. And 5th, forge stronger collaboration with stakeholders, including the private sector and civil society. Open Ownership is committed to supporting the Philippine government in achieving these aims. In addition to our ongoing support to the SEC, we are also supporting procurement authorities currently in Kenya, Zambia, and Chile to enable the use of BO data in public tenders. By leveraging our experience and expertise, we hope that this collaboration would help the Philippines achieve its integrity and anti-corruption strategies. We also hope that in the near future, we will be able to showcase your achievements to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, once again for showing what a global effort this truly is and the wonderful collaborations that Open Ownership has here with stakeholders here in the Philippines and elsewhere in taking what's been a long journey, as you said, started a while ago, to its next step. I'm going to switch tacks a little bit. I have some time reminders from the room. I'll come back to you, Evelyn, shortly, but let's turn first to something that has been mentioned over the course of the conversation so far, issues of energy transition and climate change. We know that Philippines is one of the most vulnerable countries, the 3rd most vulnerable country to climate change, according to the World Risk Report, with serious impacts on increased frequency of natural disasters, threats to food security, and public health risks. We also know there are efforts underway to ensure that the energy transition not only takes place, but that it is just. So we turn now to understanding what policies are being undertaken right now, what policies and programs are being put in place to ensure that the efforts to combat climate change and ensure a just energy transition is being done in a transparent and participatory way. So I'll go first to Secretary Rafael Lotila from the Department of Energy. Secretary, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. We know that the energy transition will be driven by investments in a transparent government system. And renewable energy has been identified as a priority of this administration to achieve 35% of the energy mix by 2030 and 50% by 2050. And the Philippine Energy Plan, which is from 2023 to 2050, specifies that achieving the clean energy scenario necessitates substantial investments of some 28 trillion pesos under the Clean Energy Scenario 1 and 31 trillion under Clean Energy Scenario 2. I therefore take strong exception to the statement that the Philippines has no climate change or no energy action plans. What if that statement is related to the absence of a net zero commitment, and the Philippines is the only country in ASEAN that has not made a net zero commitment? That is because the Philippine commitment is to reduce greenhouse gas is not all unconditional. It is premised on external resources being made available to pave the way for a just and fair transition. In the case of the Philippines, our energy sector is unsubsidized, unlike many of our neighbors and in other countries where the subsidy is between 30 to even as high as 80% given to the energy sector. So, since more than 2 decades ago, the Philippines has the distinction of having the second highest power rates in the ASEAN region. And therefore, if we are going to fund this transition fully from the resources available to our people, then we will be making life worse for them. And that will be unjust. Now, there are things, however, that we on our own can do, and we are doing. And among them, we have had initiatives like the Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop system introduced by Congress, which allows a fast-track implementation of new energy projects, paperless and electronic application, which are all time-bound. And we have in the upstream sector, as Undersecretary Agabin has pointed out, our commitment to support the extractive industry's transparency initiative is there, and we will continue with that. In the upstream sector, we have issued a policy which provides stakeholders with free access to declassified petroleum data to spur exploration activities in the country, which may potentially provide new discoveries of gas fields that are needed as a transition fuel to support renewable energy. Now, the Green Energy Auction Program, of which 3 are going to be conducted in 2025, are in support of our renewable energy targets. So this February 25, our Green Energy Auction for geothermal, run-of-river, impounding, and pump storage hydro is ongoing. By March, we will do the Green Energy Auction for ground-mounted solar, roof-mounted solar, floating solar, onshore wind, biomass waste-to-energy, and integrated renewable energy storage systems. And hopefully by the middle of this year, we will be able to have our offshore wind auctions. Now, on the transparency from the consumer side, we have the Philippine Energy Labeling Program, which promotes consumer confidence in adopting and choosing energy-efficient products. And since 2019, the number of appliances has increased so far to 8. Then we have the Vehicle Fuel Labeling Program, ensures critical data, including fuel economy ratings that are accessible and verifiable, and empowers consumers in making informed decisions on vehicle purchase, especially for electric vehicles. So the Philippines was ranked as the second most attractive emerging market for RE investments in 2024 based on Bloomberg's Climate Scope report. And of the 1.62 trillion pesos of investments approved by the Board of Investments in 2024, 85% is for the energy, particularly renewables sector. So I would like to invite you, therefore, and to examine our 3-volume Philippine energy plan, because these are part of our efforts in order to chart a sustainable future for the country and do our fair share of the efforts towards a just energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Lotila, for reminding us of the challenges and trade-offs that are often involved in making these decisions, but also outlining some of the plans you have underway. I'll move next to Secretary Antonia Yulo Loizaga, Secretary from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Secretary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. All courtesies observed, and I will not go over what our Secretary of Energy, of course, our representatives from the SEC and the DOF have already mentioned, but certainly in terms of transparency, participation, and justice, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources has introduced the formulation on the creation of a national natural resource geospatial database, which maps every natural resource in the country geographically and relates it to specific infrastructure and communities and other development priorities. We have used this database now to actually launch in the discussion stage a national geospatial strategy for regional development, which integrates natural and built environments, and for us to anticipate early impacts that may be caused by introduction of infrastructure or other types of physical changes to the environment. We work very closely with the DOE, with the DPWH, with our DSUD, the Housing Department, as well as NEDA and the Department of Transportation. We know that the demand for metallics and non-metallics will rise in response to the energy transition needed towards managing our climate, and therefore we also need to balance that against the need for investments in infrastructure and the achievement of our development goals. We can identify at this point potential sources for minerals, but we also know where restricted and no-go areas are because of the protected area status, key biodiversity areas, as well as vulnerable communities. Using this tool, we are able then to maximize and optimize the allocation and identification of natural resources for social and economic development, working with other departments. On localization, we've actually introduced a project in the department called Project Transform, which is environment and natural resources governance through transdisciplinary approaches involving communities, the private sector, and civil society. Related to this is the climate and disaster risk lens we've adopted. Under this administration, the DNR has launched, together with other departments but spearheaded by our own, the National Adaptation Plan, a multi-agency and local government document in order for us to look at science as the basis for our action moving forward in terms of adaptation. We've also launched the NDC implementation plan, which actually allows us to identify sectors that will need to transition away from their own emissions, coupled with a just transition program. The Just Transition Program is a national effort, and here we are co-chairs together with the Secretary of Energy and the Secretary of Labor in order to ensure that we cover as much as possible the key areas that will need the transition to be closely monitored and to be quite equitable. All departments, as well as civil society and private sector, academia, are part of a consultation process that will be a year-long and we will hopefully be able to launch this document preliminarily in the next COP. On mining specifically, as you have already heard, we have rejoined the EITI, and the department has participated in the regional consultations. On our own, we have also done our share in actually adopting a beneficial ownership approach, our own investigations internally in terms of the different applications and existing applicants. We are strengthening monitoring and enforcement using remote sensing, satellite imagery in particular, and posting actually personnel in the different areas where regionally mining is actually a very high level activity. On the social development management programs, which is by law, we are about the only country I know that has an SDMP required from mining companies. We have now launched a new department order which says that each SDMP must be linked to a specific target and goal of the SDGs. We have also developed what we call a negotiated resilience approach to the environmental compliance process, wherein they must now include their transition plan to renewable energy, their proximity to protected areas and vulnerable communities, as well as to cultural, built, and physical sites that are historically significant. We're working with companies who have agreed to our posting personnel in their particular operations areas. And now, with the MICC being actively participating in the process, together with other departments, we feel that the critical minerals policy that has been developed will be more reflective of the different environmental and social concerns that have been raised in the past. We take note of the UN Secretary General's document from the panel that he has organized on the critical energy transition minerals and the need for the respect for both social as well as environmental goals that are critical to the transition towards a net zero or a carbon neutral environment. Lastly, I would like to say that I'm grateful for the recognition that the MGB has in fact now posted the different types of information that will be available to the public regarding social programs as well as ownership and other processes that are being processed now by the Mines and Geoscience Bureau, but also our Environmental Management Bureau has been cited by the Presidential Communications Office for its freedom of information achievements. Particularly, we are the top requested and the top most responsive bureau in terms of FOI. And on that note, I'll close here. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. I think important points coming up in there, both just energy transition and adapting to climate change, not just the department, one department's job, but really requires policy convergence across the Philippine government, but also not a challenge that governments can tackle on their own. So let's hear from our civil society partners. I'll go first to Danica Marie Supnet, Director for Climate Policy Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities. Danica, your response, please.
Thank you very much, Shreya, and good day to all. We in the Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities would like to emphasize that the OGP commitments should be central on how countries will address climate issues, especially for Asia and the Pacific, a region that is highly vulnerable to climate change impacts, yet is rich in natural resources and has vast economic potential growths. Working with governments, civil society, academia, and the private sector as a collective multi-sector action is and should always be at the core of our work. With climate and environment now recognized as a sector in the Philippine Open Government Partnership, we must ensure that climate action, environment conservation, and energy security efforts go hand in hand. And so, as the world transitions to cleaner energy sources, we must broaden the definitions of extractives to include renewable energy materials. By aligning with the EITI standards, which emphasize transparency and participatory governance, we can enhance how local electric cooperatives procure power and support them in diversifying their energy mix. Our work on the energy transition has proven that the energy systems must fit the actual needs of Filipinos. We must elevate the energy transition through the lens of energy security by pushing to increase the share of renewable energy sources and modernizing the grid. but we also have to keep in mind both the direct and indirect impacts of developing renewable energy technologies and guarantee that its development will not be at the expense of the environment and the communities. Further, leveraging finance is also critical. Available climate and development finance can transform to short-term goals of recovery and even long-term strategies towards resilience. We have to demand the financing we are owed, and likewise, be transparent and accountable on its utilization, and measure its impacts through potential reforms on the implementation of climate change expenditure tagging systems to ensure that finance flows to the communities who need it the most. We can attest to the role of civil society's play in ensuring accountability, fairness, and inclusivity in governance approaches to climate action. Through our collective action, let's ensure that the voices and perspectives of local governments and communities are accounted for and heard. Further, maximize these spaces and ensure that these high-level discussions will translate to action. We have to monitor our commitments made and evaluate their impacts. And lastly, as our climate scientists have been saying, we are pressed for time. And so we have to work together and ensure that all sectors are empowered to act on climate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danica, and also for raising the issues around climate financing, both ensuring that there are enough resources going towards these goals, but also ensuring the accountability, making sure the money reaches the, ultimately results in benefits for the people that will be most impacted by climate change. Staying on the topic, I'll go next to Beverly Besmanos from the Mindanao Subnational Bantay Kita group. Beverly, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. We know that the Philippines contribute to only 0.35% to global greenhouse gas emissions, yet remains among the top 3 countries in the world most vulnerable to climate change. Our communities are frontline to the world's most severe natural disasters. We also know that we are home to some of the world's largest transition mineral reserves. In 2019, an island in Mindanao, in the Philippines, remained a national leader in nickel ore production with over 4.018 billion or 69 million USD of gross outputs. 90% of these nickel ores are exported to China, Australia, Japan, and recently South Korea, where it is converted into a material for Panasonic's lithium-ion batteries for Tesla's electronic cars. Our government has projected an increase of 190 new mining projects within the next 4 years due to the increased demand for transition minerals. But how will climate-vulnerable communities in the Philippines hosting the raw materials necessary for a low-carbon future be protected? There are 495 recorded human rights violations concerning transition mineral extraction in the whole Philippines. The country was known as the deadliest place in the world to be land defenders and activists, with the mining sector being the most dangerous sector. In face of the global demand for nickel, it is critical to ensure mining accountability safeguards, proper environmental impact assessments, and responsible business conduct are put in place, which prioritize protecting host communities from impacts of the climate crisis and ensure the preservation of critical forest ecosystems, watersheds, and livelihood. In civil society working in the extractives, we continue to push for the institutionalization of the Climate Accountability Bill to establish a due diligence standard of care for extractives to be more accountable across their value chain. We call for the DILG to support the credible CSO selection process at the local level to maximize participation in mining oversight committees. We continue to demand an active support from the government, the Philippine EITI, to fund civil society and local communities' participation and engagement to government processes. We propose inclusion of the renewable energy sector in the Philippine EITI as large-scale energy projects have impacts to local communities. We will push for the moratorium of offshore mining, deep seabed quarrying, and deep sea mining. We push back greenwashing of large-scale extractive projects that only benefits business sectors. We call for the DENR to sign the data sharing agreement with the Securities and Exchange Commission to incorporate beneficial ownership review as part of open contracting. We also call for the subnational consultation of the newly proposed or approved for the third reading in the Senate, the proposed mining fiscal regime prior to its enactment. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, Beverly. I think both Danica and you highlighting the urgency of action, but suggesting a path forward. So I hope this will open up a dialogue between civil society and government in the coming days, but in the months ahead as well to move forward. Sarah, EITI has been mentioned a few times. Perhaps you'd like to enlighten the room about EITI itself and what Philippines can learn from others in the EITI family. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shreya, and good afternoon to everyone. EITI, if you don't know us, we are the global standard for accountability and transparency in the oil, gas, and mining sectors. Philippines has been implementing the EITI standard since 2013 and recently reached the milestone of the 10th annual report. So it's actually a really good moment to take stock of what we've achieved and where we can move forward. Now, with the energy transition, we find Philippines at a pivotal moment of opportunity and risk that needs a scaling of ambition for EITI. We've heard about increased investment in transition minerals that can bring new income and spending on community projects. But this will also pose governance and community level risks through fast-track license approvals, through RUS consultations. The EITI has the tools to address these risks. First, by closing disclosure gaps and implementing the new provisions of the 2023 standard that specifically address challenges around the energy transition. Improved disclosures of and use of beneficial ownership data of companies will help identify corruption risks as you attract more investors to your mining sector. Reporting on consultation processes and environmental impact assessments will help citizens to monitor how projects are approved as well as environmental obligations. Ensuring citizens have access to relevant data about mining projects in their community and who benefits from them will improve public oversight and integrity of a sector that unfortunately retains a reputation for opacity and corruption in the Philippines. It will also require a degree of creativity and innovation to ensure that data is accessible and understandable to communities who are living near mining sites. We are piloting approaches in other countries using WhatsApp, billboard, posters, radio in Colombia, Ghana, and Indonesia, and we'll be able to share lessons soon for how this might be able to move forward in Philippines. As well as data, we have dialogue between government, companies, and civil society. We see that as crucial to shape the future of Philippines' transition pathways. Providing platforms for dialogue between stakeholders whose lives are directly impacted by mining is an important next step, as is building the capacity of civil society to use data and to engage in decision making. Philippines EITI has plans and ambitions for both, as we've heard, and we see opportunities for government to ensure that these efforts for data and dialogue inform ongoing reforms in the sector. Now, these challenges sound grand, and they are grand, but they're not unique to the Philippines. They are shared among EITI implementing countries, and we are planning a dedicated peer exchange forum on energy transition later this year, so we'll be back here in Manila to support sharing of innovative EITI implementation across the region. Subnational implementation of EITI in Mongolia, systematic disclosure of extractive data in Indonesia, and beyond the region, we know that Mauritania is piloting inclusion of renewables in their EITI reporting. Trinidad and Tobago have started reporting on emissions from their extractive projects. So lots of opportunities to learn. And finally, we do need to recognize that the landscape for funding on climate and energy transition priorities is shifting. It's great to hear the government's strong commitment to EITI, together with strong coordination between partners, including the International Secretariat. This commitment will enable Philippines to position itself as a major producer of transition minerals, respond to the needs of communities, and deliver a fairer green transition. We look forward to supporting Philippines on the road ahead and to supporting the opportunities for peer exchange around the areas that I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for that offer of support, those inspiring examples from around the world, but also pointing out the importance of data and dialogue feeding into decision-making. We've talked about anti-corruption, we've talked about climate change and the energy transition. I'll come to you, Evelyn, because in a way, infrastructure, and especially climate-resilient infrastructure, is top of everyone's minds as we talk about these issues. Tell us about COST, the Infrastructure Transparency Initiative, what you're seeing in these domains, and what examples the Philippines can learn about. Evelyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to start by saying that over the years at COST, we have accumulated evidence of causes of delay in projects implementation, poor performance, mismanagement, inefficiencies, and what data is suggesting is that government and civil society should put an emphasis in the early stages of a project, meaning that we need to reinforce project preparation and appraisal. We believe that this emphasis will help then to improve project implementation and completion within timeframes and budgets. Based on our experience, we are dedicating our efforts to accelerate sustainable and resilient infrastructure. We have been improving our standards to stimulate better decision-making from an economic, social, environmental, and institutional perspective. But also, we have been working on developing tools and resources to monitor climate finance investments for infrastructure, basically aiming at mitigation and adaptation to climate change to respond to the pressing challenges of our time. Our standards include a multi-stakeholder approach in which government, civil society, and the private sector discuss key policy issues and co-create solutions aiming to improving service delivery. We trust that some of our adapted tools and standards are beneficial to the successful implementation of the Digital Information for Monitoring and Evaluation project in the Philippines. The country can take inspiration from our experience globally, but just to provide some examples within the region, in Thailand, the Ministry of Finance reports savings of more than $700 million after applying the cost approach in projects with high value. And in Indonesia, we have local experience in West Lombok and Nusa Tenggara province, where the publication and the analysis of data resulted in better monitoring of the financial and physical progress of road projects. Beyond the region, our experience in Costa Rica, Colombia, and Panama could be another source of inspiration, since the focus there has been on mega projects such as metro lines, highways, rapid transit solutions, but also energy projects. All our standards, tools, and resources are freely available, but if you need technical assistance, we are very happy to provide it. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. I think a reminder from many of our partners that there are existing standards, and of course, these must be adapted to local contexts. But the nature of these challenges are transnational, and if we have more and more countries adopting these standards, then we have a way forward towards finding regional solutions. Let's turn now to the topic of access to information. We've talked a lot about data disclosures, all kinds of data interoperability, but underlying all of that, of course, is the fundamental issue of access to information. The public has a right to information, as you've heard through today's opening plenary. And of course, we know that here in the Philippines, absent a law and outstanding commitment from the first OGP action plan, the Philippines has issued an executive order on the freedom of information. And this executive order has been followed by the establishment of the FOI Project Management Office with permanent staffing under the Presidential Communications Office. Since then, citizens have made over 240,000 requests and counting through the FOI portal. But we know there's more to know. So in this round, we'll identify future actions needed on strengthening access to information in the Philippines. I first invite Emeril Redao, Senior Undersecretary from the Presidential Communications Office. Undersecretary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So first, I do want to say it is an honor to be sitting among such esteemed members of this forum and to hear about what we're doing in the Philippines and to also share how we're rising to the challenge of open government. Of course, transparency and accountability are at the bedrock of our governance, and President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has actually, in his policies, emphasized both of these as key principles to ending corruption. And at the Presidential Communications Office, the Freedom of Information program has been our main vehicle for connecting citizens or making transparency directly available to them. In improving our services to provide meaningful public engagement. So in addition to what was mentioned earlier, we have in fact received in our e-FOI platforms over 240,000 requests. We have over 317,000 members now on that platform, and we do connect these members to 641 agencies across the country. That is supported by 6,000 staff across the Philippines. And so I'm happy to say we are able to process requests successfully with an average of about 8 days processing time, which is well below the recommended 15 days. We do believe that the results have spoken for themselves, at least in the infancy of this program. So we do have a 97% compliance rate with the national government agencies within the FOI program. And I believe that does demonstrate sort of the progress that we've made. But we also believe that access is actually not enough. And it's equally important to also empower the citizens to critically engage with the information that they receive, which is also why the Presidential Communications Office spearheads the Media and Information Literacy Program. This equips Filipinos with the skills to they themselves evaluate the information that they receive and to combat disinformation and misinformation, which are so rampant in online platforms today. So with the MIL program, we are partnering. It is a government-initiated program, but we do partner with relevant agencies in the private sector. So for example, we are working directly with Meta for Facebook and Instagram, with Google for YouTube, with TikTok, of course, both of which are companies that we have collaborated with to provide workshops for government agencies specifically to train their communications departments, their communications teams, on how to utilize digital media to effectively communicate and be more transparent about their programs and their activities. We also, of course, collaborate with X. And we also partner with several groups in civil society. They are giving us recommendations about what we can improve, and this includes groups like Verifiles. For those who may not have local context, Verifiles is a third-party fact-checker, and they never hesitate to point out any sort of discrepancies that anybody in government may have made in their communications. And so rather than dismiss them as simply a staunch critic, we actually partner with them to better improve the way that we deliver information accurately, timely, and effectively to the public. So with the MIL program, sort of the irony is that in as much as we continue to build more robust systems such as the e-FOI, which aims to provide faster digital FOI services to the citizens, the irony is that we hope to see fewer requests from the public, actually, as they become better equipped, they themselves, to seek out legitimate information, verified information, and to discern misinformation, fact from fiction. So again, the PCO is very grateful for the opportunity to participate in this forum, and we greatly appreciate the input of our partners in civil society and in the private sector. I do note that the Philippines still needs to enact an FOI law, and that remains a priority of this administration today. So our next steps are, of course, very clear. We are committed to continuing to strengthen public engagement and make sure that government data continues to be accessible and understandable, and to ensure that that information reaches the citizens who seek it. We do believe that if we get this right, transparency does not just inform, but it does empower. And when people are empowered, that is when democracy thrives. Thank you again very much.
Thank you, Undersecretary Emerald Riddau. Of course, you pointed to many things in your interventions, the need for proactive disclosure, capacity building for citizens to access the initiatives that the PCO has been spearheading, but also touched upon issues of mis and disinformation and what does access to information mean in the age of dis and misinformation. We'll come to that shortly, but let me first go to Attorney Irene Aguila, co-convener of the Right to Know, Right Now Coalition, long-term advocates of FOI in the Philippines. Attorney Irene.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Philippine Philippine FOI story is one of pride and embarrassment. Embarrassing because while we boast of the Philippines being a proud democratic country in Southeast Asia with a dynamic CSO scene and one of the original OGP members and now co-chair of the OGP Steering Committee, the political leaders of our country still have not actively pushed and championed for the passage of a Freedom of Information law. We all know that the absence of a law means that the promises of transparency, accountability, and ease of access to information remain on shaky ground. This proves even more difficult as we navigate the waters of privacy vis-a-vis transparency, government contracts, concessions, financial assistance vis-a-vis accountability, controversial issues like the drug war, confidential funds, social amelioration programs leading up to and amid elections vis-a-vis the need for disclosure. Notwithstanding, we are proudest of the vibrant CSO movement of which many of our members in the network are actively a part that continues to push the needle when it comes to the government's inertia on certain transparency, accountability, and disclosure matters, as seen in the work of our members in procurement audit, asset records review, and abuse of state resource exposés. The FOI-EO is not enough, and with the absence of the Philippine FOI law and against the resistance of some government offices to open up, like the Office of the Ombudsman that has made it a policy to make the statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth nearly impossible to access, red tagging of journalists and activists who ask and demand answers, we in the Right to Know Right Now coalition have learned a lot from our FOI practice, notwithstanding the absence of a law. How through it we improve our advocacy and at the same time, because we push, some government agencies have bettered their FOI systems, such as the COMELEC, which has been actively involved in monitoring ASR and has released new rules on vote buying. While the whole of government approach has been a source of promises unmet and decades of frustration, we draw inspirations from some islands of hope inside of government and lots of inspiration from CSOs and social movements who've made working on transparency and accountability for the longest time, close to 4 decades in fact, and many, in fact, in critical engagement with government at different levels, and also many more with providing a lot of analysis of what is on the ground and helping popularize the concepts of disclosure, transparency, and accountability in the grassroots, such as Bantay Kita and other environmental groups working on transparency and beneficial ownership in the extractive sector, PS Link, which mobilizes its member workers in the public sector for the promotion of transparency, Action for Economic Reforms, for Fiscal Transparency and Responsibility, and Center for Migrant Advocacy, focused on empowering and advocating for our Filipinos abroad, to name some. Where are we then in the immediate future? With the actual on-ground implementation of the new procurement law too early to tell, and the budget shrouded in secrecy, as seen in its growing opaqueness, like the huge increase in unprogrammed appropriations in favor of ayuda, we know too well that these are vulnerable to patronage politics and abuse. Hence, we remain apprehensive and hold off on celebrating at this point. Amid the glowing reports of the Philippines, the absence of the law, and the failure to institutionalize the entire FOI infrastructure, government agencies adding to exceptions to the RTI when none exist in law or jurisprudence, widespread use of confidential funds, absence of verification and validation mechanisms for ownership throughout the lifetime of a government contract, agreement, or JVA, especially when changes take place, as in the COMELEC's fast track, the Office of the Ombudsman not seen as a champion of transparency and accountability, prohibitive costs of securing documents, such as those from the SEC, abuse of state resources woven into our fabric, especially during election season, all taken together provide the backdrop against which we in the CSOs remain to be tentative, insecure, and suspicious. Hopeful, yes, but cautiously so. To address this, we hope to see the Philippines put skin in the game, and government put its money where its mouth is. Shreya earlier raised the bar. It is easy to showcase glowing reports, and yes, we can push for more and demand more. But these will all be one-offs, tentative, and susceptible to the changes in the political mood, and will remain on mercurial ground. We cannot ignore the elephant in the room and ignore the basics. I echo the decades-long cry of the Right to Know Right Now coalition, pass the FOI law now.
Thank you, Attorney Irene. I think there is a theme here of the importance of engaging the legislators. I think the next time we do this, we need to have the legislators around us in the room as well. But I think others have also touched upon the importance of institutionalizing some of the reforms that many of our government representatives have shared here today. With that, I will continue on some of the themes that came up in this discussion around mis and disinformation. We know that democratizing digital governance is one of the key challenges and priorities facing our movement today. We cannot ignore that artificial intelligence, use of algorithms are changing the way in which citizens and the state interact, and there are calls for greater transparency and stakeholder engagement in the way in which these are used by the public sector. So to talk about digital governance and how that's being approached, what lies ahead, I invite Dave Almiron, Undersecretary, Department of Information and Communications Technology, to get us started. Undersecretary, the floor is yours.
I'm not sure how would I discuss our transformative open government efforts in just 2 minutes, but good afternoon, everyone. 2.5 years back, we checked the structure or the landscape of the digital transformation in the Philippines, and we discovered a lot of challenges, more likely political and technical at the same time. That's why we're very grateful. We're grateful to have a leader, our President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who prioritized also digitalization as one of its priority project. And simplification is actually one of the steps that we've done for the past 2 years. Simplify a lot of things. Under the DICT law, we were assisting more than 600 government agencies, not to mention 1,700 local government units. And seems like impossible at first, but thanks to the hard push also of our secretary to not only digitalize, but also to streamline a lot of processes. And he instructed us to digitalize both frontline and back-end services. The establishment of the ISSP is actually one of the success stories in the Philippines. We joined forces with DBM and NEDA. We allow government agencies to submit their own respective information systems plan so that we're able to guide them, making them not repeat and duplicate a lot of things. And part of the open government initiatives under the digitalization initiatives at the ICT, the MITHI, or the ICT Harmonization Initiative Committee, was revived only this administration. The ICT Harmonization Initiative Committee, led by the ICT, NEDA, and DBM, is actually the one that can harmonize a lot of things in the Philippines. Not only financial and also technical, we've seen around 40% of government systems are being repeated or duplicated. Cloud services, information systems, and the like. The DICT developed 25 platforms as a foundational play and as a whole of government approach. These foundational platforms will still allow government agencies to digitalize independently, develop and maintain their own respective data or systems, but allow them to integrate into a single platform. The biggest platform that we launched last year, so-called the eGov Data Exchange Platform. Right now, we have around almost 500 million transactions already in that platform. Finally, the government agencies can now integrate to one another without direct sharing of data, because data privacy is also one of the hurdle in the Philippines to make sure that agencies can integrate and more likely, cybersecurity is also one of the issue. The beauty of a latecomer like the Philippines, we're able to learn from a lot of countries. We interacted, the capacity building with Estonia, South Korea, Singapore, and other countries. Well, we are latecomer, but we're able to use newer technology. We're able to understand and learn from their mistakes, from their successes, from their challenges. And on that 25 platforms, we're able to launch more agile and more secured advanced encryption, including AI-powered and blockchain-enabled technologies. In fact, recently, only last year, we launched the eGov Super App. We already have 11 million users now. Integrated, around 1,200 systems are now integrated in it, including jobs, tourism, agriculture, national IDs also in it, and other services. The success story of our national ID in the Philippines, we're able to already generate around 84 million digital national IDs, is actually the foundation of a lot of simplification in the Philippines. And open governance needs to be accurate, so we need to make sure that we're able to clean a lot of data. Currently, we're able also to launch the eLGU. We already have around 927 LGUs using, and the eGov Cloud. The eGov Cloud, we have around 2,200 government systems now hosted in the ICT. So we're the one now taking good care of that cloud service. Well, I cannot discuss all the initiatives, but open government is actually one of the priority of the ICT, and we push for accountability and transparency, and we believe that digital transformation is actually a tool to really make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek Almirol, for pointing out some of the foundational work on digitization, data systems integration, having a data governance framework across the Philippines government as part of the road ahead for the Philippines. And as you rightly said, while you might be a latecomer to this process, there are many others that you can learn from. And we've seen across OGP many that start as latecomers but end up being frontrunners over time. So we hope by the time of the next convening, Philippines will be here to share some of its best practices. I'll turn next to Vien Suete Cortez, Team Lead Institutions and Partnerships of UNDP Philippines. You've been working in the data and digital governance space in many hats for many years now. Vien, your thoughts on what ahead for Philippines?
All right. Thank you, Shreya, and good afternoon, everyone. In terms of what's ahead, I was also thinking of looking into some of the issues that I also wanted to highlight, but intersperse it with some things that I think are also quite good to note in terms of what is being done in the Philippines. So I wanted to start with the issue of power asymmetry when it comes to digital governance. So in the Philippines, access to technologies actually remain deeply uneven. While Metro Manila and major urban centers benefit from good internet access and advanced technologies, many rural and remote areas still lack basic to no connectivity. So this digital divide not only hinders economic progress, but also exacerbates existing social inequalities. We have seen this through many research publications that highlight the recent and past elections, wherein they have shown how digital platforms were used to manipulate political discourse. Misinformation campaigns thrived, often targeting regions with lower digital literacy and limited access to reliable information. So this basically underscores the need for more inclusive digital policies, policies that are not only led by government, but also coordinated and consulted together with civil society. So to truly democratize digital governance, we must be able to close the digital divide and ensure equal access to information for all citizens. Another issue is managing complexity. So the pandemic revealed how complex the role of digital technologies can be in governance. The government's response to misinformation during this period was hampered by the complexity of managing various digital platforms and conflicting online information. So the Philippine government, in a way, has already looked into better integrated systems and stronger digital infrastructure capable of handling crises such as what we have seen during the pandemic, while delivering timely, accurate, and information to the public. The last issue that I think, or challenge that I would like to highlight is really behavioral change. Because mainly the pandemic highlighted how challenging it is to shift people's habits and perceptions regarding technology. We've seen this in terms of health-related behaviors, such as adhering to COVID-19 safety protocols, which were influenced by digital information, whether this was accurate or not. The challenge also extends to elections. Despite fact-checkers' efforts to debunk misinformation, many voters continued believing and disseminating false narratives. So addressing these challenges requires more than just providing digital tools. It necessitates a cultural shift. In doing so, we must invest in digital literacy programs that teach Filipinos not only how to use technology, but also how to critically evaluate online information. So today, I find myself seated between the chairperson of COMELEC and the undersecretary of the ICT. I'm not sure if this is by chance or by design, but at the same time, these are the two government agencies that UNDP is currently working with. First, to bridge the digital divide under our Free Wi-Fi for All program, wherein DICT actually signed an MOU with NCIP to bring internet access to indigenous communities. And second, of course, with the Commission on Elections, whom we are working to effect a cultural shift to address the issues of misinformation and disinformation in BARM with regards to their election process. So in doing so, we are integrating digital literacy in community spaces. So moving forward, we hope to see more government agencies working closely with civil society and the private sector to democratize digital governance by addressing these interconnected challenges so that technology can serve public good while reinforcing our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Vian, and I can confirm it is not, it is certainly by design that you're seated between DICT and COMELEC, because these issues are deeply connected. In an age of mis and disinformation, a backdrop of political polarization and closing civic space, trust in democratic institutions is being eroded, trust in the democratic electoral processes is being eroded. So in this round, we focus on opportunities on restoring this trust, on ensuring that fundamental freedoms, not just the right at the ballot box, but freedoms of expression, of opinion, of the right to assembly can exist. But we'll start with the question of elections first and go to Chairperson George Garcia on the Commission of Elections. Chairperson Garcia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. We honestly believe in the COMELEC that the business of election is not only the business of the Commission on Elections, it is practically the business of everyone. Most recently, your Philippine Commission on Election was given an award, 4 awards internationally. It was cited as the Election Commission of the Year, therefore recognizing perhaps that we are doing something good in the Commission on Elections. Likewise, we were elected as the Vice Chairperson of the Asian Electoral Commission Association, as well as the Association of World Electoral Bodies. By 2028, we'll be the chairperson of both bodies. Therefore, again, reinforcing the fact that perhaps the COMELEC is doing something good. But however, aside from the fact that we are focusing on the issue of transparency, accountability, we'd like to focus more on the issue of inclusiveness. And when you say inclusiveness, we would like to focus more on the issue of the vulnerable sectors of our society. Today, we have more or less 68.421 million Filipino voters. And of the 68.421 million, 11 million voters are elderly. 800,000 voters are belonging to what we call as the indigenous people, and the 500,000, the persons with disability, and 68,000. For the information of everyone, we are allowing persons deprived of liberties, those who are incarcerated, to vote on Philippine election, so long as they are not yet have not yet received final judgment on the crimes that they are being tried. And so, as far as the issue of the vulnerable sectors are concerned, we would like to implement certain innovation this coming election, such as early voting, we will be allowing the elderly, the PWDs and heavily pregnant women to vote earlier than the regular voters. They'll be voting by 5 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock for a span of 2 hours exclusively for them. Likewise, we're going to institutionalize mall voting nationwide so that voters who are residing very near the malls will no longer be voting in a very cramped elementary schools. They will be voting in different malls, which are given for free by mall owners and operators. Likewise, we are establishing emergency accessible polling precincts. No elderly will be voting in the second floor or third floor of a school building. They will have to all vote at the ground floor, even if those who will be availing of early voting. Likewise, we're going to establish polling places in far-flung barangays where the indigenous peoples are living. They will no longer be walking kilometers in order for them to be able to vote. We are going to bring the polling places to them, not them going to the polling places. We have to show that this is actually the heart of the Philippine Commission election, our care for the elderly. Likewise, we are going to, for the first time, we are going to have internet voting for our overseas Filipinos. Before, it only resulted to a 40.59% voters turnout, the highest in 2022 turnout of Filipino voters who voted. And we spent a lot of money because our modes of voting, since the time that we afforded them early voting, is by mail and personal voting. Now, they can vote by internet. And therefore, especially for our seafarers, they will no longer be disenfranchised. The most important thing is nobody should be disenfranchised, because disenfranchisement is never the business of this republic. It is practically the business of everyone. And so therefore, would like to tell all of you that the Philippine Commission election would like to enhance democracy through the use of modern technology. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairperson Garcia, reminding everyone of the freedoms begin with the ability to vote, and making that process easier and taking that process closer to people so that they can participate more freely. I know we're on time, but this is a rare opportunity to get such a distinguished panel of leaders from around the Philippines, so I hope you'll indulge us for the last few speakers we have. I'll go straight to Catherine Ruiz, founder of Kabag sa Sugbo, to give us the perspective from civil society.
Thank you so much, Shreya. The Philippines has a long and unfolding, and I would like to say exciting history, now pushing the space and making governance work for our people. For one, 34 years ago, we passed the Local Government Code, which opened up democracy. Its foundations were democratization and decentralization. So my organization was formed to maximize the space opened by the Local Government Code and pushing and expanding the democratic space, by capacitating citizens groups for them to engage their local governments, as well as investing also in the capacity building of local governments to provide the space for their civil society organizations. We acknowledge the strides made from the time of our entry in the global OGP community, especially in terms of the recent institutionalization of the Philippine Open Government. But I also share the concerns of my kaubans in the civil society community, my colleagues, in terms of our concerns with democratic backsliding, and what we feel is, although it's some people would debate us on it, shrinking civic space. So how do we connect the words? The question that I would like to pose is, how do we connect the words that we speak, oftentimes esoteric and abstract for our people? How do we connect these words to the realities that we see around us? We see continuing poverty and hunger. We see murky and opaque budget processes, and this was highlighted in the recent budget process that we went through. We see threats and harassments for citizens groups raising legitimate concerns about development projects happening in their localities. and protecting while they push to protect their rights. No? So these are the questions that I think we need to acknowledge moving forward as a country and as a collective community, pushing the boundaries of open government. We'd also like to go back to the basic questions that impelled us to be part of this community, which is, who are we doing all of this for? No? For me, it has always been very clear. I work in the province of Cebu, so I bring the voice of the local civil society here in this platform. It is very clear to us that it is for the Inday and the Dodong who have to study or do their homework under street lights. It is also very clear to us that this is all for the Manong and the Manang who have to ply their trade, no, in their mobile push carts selling various items. So these are some of the, I think, the continuing inspiration also for us to continue to engage this platform. So with all of this, how do we anchor ourselves moving forward? I would like to share three things only, which has to do with, first, defending and expanding civic space. No? So citizens must have safe spaces to engage, from public protests, no? The parliament of the streets, to policy making in hallowed halls such as this, without fear of harassment or being labeled. Because true participation means sharing power, the highest level in the rank of participation, the ladder of participation, not just being consulted and our voice being noted down. Second, we must safeguard our information ecosystem. Open government must be more than transparency on paper. It should empower every Juan and Maria with accessible, meaningful, and actionable information. This also means providing leadership against mistruths, disinformation, and misinformation, and protecting our free press. Third, we need to invest in building resilient democratic institutions. Governance should be politician-proof, grounded in active citizenship, beyond casting votes, because the work starts after you cast your vote, and putting up institutional safeguards, no, that outlast political cycles. So again, thank you so much for providing me this space to also share what we feel from the local from local civil society. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. In the interest of time, I'll just keep going. I'll come next to May Gladys, Philippines country representative from the National Democratic Institute. You've, of course, supported these processes here in the Philippines, but also elsewhere in the region. What recommendations do you have for the road ahead? May.
Thank you, Shreya. I'd like to start my intervention with sharing on what we have been focusing on in the Philippines. And I'm glad that the chair of the Commission on Elections is here. So one of how we see the problem in the Philippines is an issue of political corruption. And we have focused our efforts on addressing abuse of state resources or using government resources for electoral gain. And we have seen how abuse of state resources has consequences on governance. And I'm glad that the chair mentioned the vulnerable sectors because they are the most affected by the consequences of abuse of state resources and governance. We have also seen how this has contributed to the significant democratic backsliding that we have seen in the Philippines. Instead, we see also that our legislators have institutionalized more aid that can be abused for the elections. So our approach at the National Democratic Institute has really been focused on empowering civil society organizations, building technical capacity of civil society organizations, both at the national and subnational level, to monitor abuse of state resources and also work with government institutions such as the Commission on Elections, Department of Interior, and local government to address these issues from an institutional level and also enhance the transparency of these institutions. The results that we have was mentioned by the chair earlier. The Commission has focused on vulnerable sectors, but also more importantly, we have regulations now to address abuse of state resources and vote buying in the 2025 elections. However, there's still much to be achieved. We need to monitor how that's going to be implemented. And I think the way forward really is to also look at the commitments of government and civil society in the OGP and see how these are meaningful and see how these translate to real tangible benefits that the vulnerable sectors and Filipinos can really feel and benefit from. The Philippines has one of the very high voter turnout. I think it's 82.6%. That does not speak of the situation of democracy. We need to do more, and OGP is a good platform to do that. And CSO and government coming together with the private sector is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, May. Now we are well into our coffee break, so our last round of speakers have the task before them to keep their remarks to 2 minutes, if they can. This is challenging when you have so many dimensions of open government to discuss in one roundtable, but I'm sure we'll get through to it. The question of mainstreaming open government, institutionalization of open government has come up several times. The Philippine Development Plan, of course, has created the pathway of doing so by incorporating practices of open government. So without further ado, I will go to Undersecretary Rosemary Edilon from NEDA to talk about mainstreaming practices that the NEDA is promoting.
Yes, thank you very much, and we're happy to be here and proud to be members of this very esteemed panel. So just to say that NEDA has always been very active in engaging with non-government stakeholders in the performance of all our mandates, and we use several modalities, and we do it for various purposes as well. So let's say for policy analysis and policy formulation, we would do crowdsourcing, we would do a man-in-the-street interview, focus group discussions, and of course the surveys. And then for the development planning, as you mentioned earlier, we actually would hold several consultations nationwide, and we also create an advisory council that includes the private sector, the business, academia, and civil society, and this would have a bigger say on the development plans. But by far, our I would say our most evolved form of open government partnership has been our stakeholders chamber for the Sustainable Development Goals. So NEDA actually has the oversight for the implementation, monitoring, evaluation of our commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, realizing that this requires a whole of society, we established the stakeholders chambers, and right now we have about 60 members from the private sector, academia, and then civil society. So this is really to ensure collaboration, really a whole of society approach for the SDG. And let me just move on to how can this be mainstream, looking at our previous experiences. First of all, it has to be founded on mutual trust and mutual respect. So I think this is where we have really capitalized on the various engagements that we've had with the non-government stakeholders, because this one results from various, interconnectedness, various interactions, various exchanges, where you develop this, like I said, this mutual trust and the mutual respect. Number two, there has to be a shared vision, a common vision, and we have to go beyond objectives, beyond goals, because goals you could be at cross purposes. For instance, for let's say the private sector, for those in the business, they would be profit maximizing. We would be something else, equity versus efficiency, and there will be cross purposes, and that will be difficult. But if you go to higher level goals, so like the SDG in this case, then you can have that greater intersection, and there could be a room for really this partnership to happen. And then, of course, there has to be this willingness to cooperate, willingness to be equal partners. And in the case of the stakeholders chambers, we actually come up with terms of reference. We actually have very regular meetings with them, and we have a venue for them to meet amongst themselves first, and then to meet with the government counterpart. And we are also very conscious in making sure that they are included in our other activities, so that they really feel that we are together in this goal of the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, we even come up with a map, literally a map, where we map out all those where government will be there, and what sort of SDG will we be focusing on, which one, where, and then they will now tell us where they will be. And that really, is really also for making sure that we get the most bang for the buck. So moving forward, we see a lot more areas of cooperation, a lot more areas for partnership. And then I like the part of the previous speaker who mentioned that, for open government partnership to really be successful, we really need to be open so that those who are not from government, they can come in. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek Rosemary, for the reminder that vision and willingness is important, but also how important it is to integrate the open government principles and practices in the pursuit of the SDGs, which the NEDA is championing. I'll go next to Abdullah Hussain, Deputy Minister of Finance and Budget from the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Of course, localization is a big part of the mainstreaming agenda here. Abdullah.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Good afternoon to everyone. I'll try to make this very short. For those who are not yet aware of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, a little context. The BARM is the political entity established in 2019 by virtue of Republic Act 11054, which essentially is the legislated political agreement entered into by and between the Maoist Islamic Liberation Front and the government of the Philippines for 17 long years. And I think it is fair to say that the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, which is the transitional government for BARM, is fortunate to have the opportunity to not really start from scratch, but as far as governance is concerned, from day one, our Chief Minister, his platform of government has always been the pursuit of moral governance. Simply put, this moral governance framework is a submission on our part to the Islamic injunction of commanding what is good and forbidding what is evil. And it is expected of us, all workers of the Bangsamoro government, to always be aware and conscious of this leadership framework by the current government. As far as open government is concerned, we would like to state that our moral governance is very much aligned with the principles of open government. Transparency, accountability, and public trust, among other things, are the things that we always pursue. In fact, I would say that among all public government employees in the Philippines, it's only us in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region who have to undertake 2 oaths. Number one is the civil service oath of office, and the other one is our oath of moral governance. This is to really emphasize the idea of accountability and transparency. For us workers, we believe that accountability should not be only in this world. Even if we have abundance of laws, if people do not really believe in it, and if they do not have fear of its consequences in this mundane world and the hereafter, all of this would not be helpful in transforming us. So There are a lot of things that we have done over the past 6 years. And I think my time is up. Suffice to say that the Bangsamoro government would continue to pursue all the tenets of what we call moral governance, which is very much akin to open governments. Wabillahi tawfiq wa hidayah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister. It's quite significant that you're here today, and we've been hearing that Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao might even want to join the OGP local program, so we very much look forward to that day. Very quickly, I'll go to Annie Hiron next from the Public Sector, Public Services Labor Independent Confederation, National Public Workers Congress. Annie, I will require you to be very brief.
Yes.
The mistake is mine, but...
Rapido. Thank you, Shreya, and I'm happy to be in this panel. PS Link has been campaigning for the enactment of Freedom of Information law because we believe that it's fundamental to mainstreaming OGP partnership, in order to ensure that sustainability, permanency, predictability, and irreversibility of reforms are guaranteed. And FOI law and its faithful implementation is absolutely necessary. In the case of the Philippines, Executive Order 31 is a big step forward towards institutionalization of OGP. No doubt about that. But EO is like a trip ticket with limited itinerary and limited passenger seats. You know, and a successful OGP journey will take not only the executive, but also the legislative, the judiciary, the constitutional bodies, and the local government. And just to say that if there are parts of the government who view OGP journey as optional, or others who takes a different route, or others will pull the brake in order to slow it down, then the OGP trip will be perilous. So I would like to say that from silos of OGP champions or OGP agency, an FOI law will be compelling and accelerating the OGP NAS journey from a service road, slow service road, to perhaps an expressway, even a skyway speed. And finally, for us, for trade union, an OGP-compliant government is one that respects freedom of association. The Philippines is unfortunately a country for 3 consecutive years identified as 10 worst country for workers and for trade unions. So we would like to see that an OGP-compliant government guarantees freedom of discrimination, freedom of forced labor, guarantees the constitutionally guaranteed right for security of tenure and living wage, and ensure that the workforce is free from child labor. Finally, just 2 seconds. For us, an OGP-compliant government is one that guarantees quality public service characterized by an adequately funded and focused public services. There is rule of law, employ people based on merits, roots out corruption, train staff, provides information, and consult stakeholders. And that it is a government that is rights-based and people-centered. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie, for throwing that gauntlet and for taking us on a visual journey of what the difference is between having a law and not. Final word, Zalavedina's Board of Directors, Mindanao Organization for Social and Economic Progress. Again, I request you to be brief. We are now holding up possibly the next session as well, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. Mindanao Organization is based in BARM. So to start with, I would like to thank you for the invitation. We know that the Philippines is one of the most vibrant democratic nations in the world, and that embodies the civic and civil society engagement to the national government affair. We, as Mindanao Organization for Social Economic Progress, as we embark to the Open Governance Partnership that was launched in 2023 by no less than our energetic Secretary Amin Andaman from Mindanao in advocating the institutionalization of the OGP Pinas in fostering stronger partnership with the government and the CSO stakeholder is now getting into the next level. Admittedly, the principle and values of the OGP is noble, yet is still needing aggressive and more positive, forward-looking and engaging CSO in an inevitable and non-negotiable mechanism, platforms, and tools needed to establish in achieving responsive governance and future-proof leadership in facing challenges across government level and ecosystem. The operationalization of OGP that will lead to the attract and encourage active engagement of civil society organizations with the government as partner to raise the level of community awareness and people's participation is our fundamental rights rather than as perceived as privilege and other way around. Thousands of civil society organizations and NGOs all over the countries, including ourselves from the war-torn region of Mindanao, the newly Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Mindanao are so hopeful as the OGP is now in the horizon as a transformative and game changer that makes a better and brighter, peaceful region. Our organization has been active member of the Regional Economic Development Council as a private sector, representing various civil society organizations, and we also have been participating in public procurement process as CSO observer, which we think as an optional just to legitimize the whole process with limited roles and lack of oversight function. In conclusion, we as CSO representative committed to continue to be more strategically relevant, dynamic, and empowering, and remain steadfast in the development frontline in the pursuit of inclusive, sustainable progress, prosperity that is reflected to our aspiration and values and culture. Wabillahi tawfiq wal hidayah. Wassalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Zalawe. I think it was a brave endeavor to try and moderate this dialogue, but certainly not braver than all of you reformers from government, civil society, independent commissions, trying to make open government deliver results for the people here in the Philippines. There's no way I can try and summarize this very complex and multifaceted journey that has been for Philippines or the road that lies ahead. But certainly today we've seen some wonderful initiatives that are underway, some challenges to take that ambition further, and areas where there are disagreements. The point of OGP is to provide safe spaces for dialogue, and I hope you will use the remainder of this event to continue these conversations and forge the path ahead. As you do have this dialogue, I request that you do this outside the doors, because the next session is ready to take the place of all our esteemed panelists here, and we should be fair to them. Thank you, everyone. Apologies for being a terrible timekeeper, and looking forward to working with all of you in the coming months and years. Thank you.